Welcome, everybody, to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim. Tonight, we have a full panel again, and we have our co-host back. Nicole's back finally. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Welcome back for me to you.
Okay. Everybody else on the panel, one of my best friends is Nos down on the bottom left. My maven of the chat room, Odessa, in the middle. And my new friend, Drew Banky, over in the right-hand corner. And up in the left is our main guest, Tony Rodrigues. Yes, I remembered how to pronounce it, Tony. Everybody else that I've been watching interviews with you lately say Rodriguez, which is wrong. So I say Rodrigues. And
American common name. I've been called worse.
Oh, so have I. Anyways, Tony is a very talented author. He has 2 books out and 1 about to be released. The first book is Ceres Colony Cavalier, which we're going to get into tonight. Maybe a little bit into his Project Star Maker book, the second one, which is the sequel to Ceres Colony Cavalier. And maybe he can let us know a little bit about his third book as well. So I want to introduce Tony Rodrigues to everyone on the panel, everyone who's watching at home, and everybody who's in the chat. Please welcome Tony.
Welcome,
Thanks.
Tony. Absolutely.
Thanks, you guys are good. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Tonight we're going to be talking about a subject that many are aware of already. But those of you who are not, this is a subject that you may find hard to believe, but it is the truth, and it comes from the man who has experienced it himself. One thing I want to say is this: no matter what Corey Goode said before Congress, do not take that into effect as fact, because I personally believe he was covering up his own behind, because there are a lot of people out there that are coming out with the same story. So Corey Goode did not invent the story, and tonight you will find out why. So without further ado, take it away, Tony.
Thanks, Tim. So I guess you want me to start from the top, but I want to touch on what you said about the other whistleblower.
Yes.
There are many testimonies about the technology that I described being subject to. And what happened to me was in 1982. So it was a long time ago. But there are other people that came out before any of the, I was on the show Cosmic Disclosure, I think season 13. But there are plenty of accounts of what we're talking about, the 20 and back technology and the bases on Mars and the infrastructure in the solar system. There's a lot of other details about that. So I would say anybody, not just my testimony or not any one testimony. You have to look at them all and kind of take the common denominator as fact, and keep an open mind, because there are people out there with fragmented memories. They don't remember it so good. There are people out there that are outright fakes for whatever reason. There are people that are trying to dilute the information. And there are a lot of people that have been through it. I mean, I've worked one-on-one with a few thousand people since I've gone public. So it's not a random small phenomenon. I am fortunate that I have enough memory to put together a coherent story, because a lot of people don't have enough memories to put together a beginning, middle, and end of their abduction. So most people have very fragmented memories, only bits and pieces of horrible things that they remember, or other things, benevolent things. But it's alive and well. The 20 and back technology is life extension technology, and it's very well received by the people that have access to the programs, to the black programs, and they're alive and well. They're doing it. So not just one person, and don't let one bad testimony throw out the baby with the bathwater kind of thing. So every time we go and find information or try to find proof, a lot of it pans out. So I've got a lot of things that substantiate. What are we talking about, right? So you want me to take it from the top for people that never heard of it before?
Sure.
Is that what?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I grew up in southern Michigan, near Ann Arbor, place Ypsilanti, Michigan. It was a small school out in the sticks. And around third grade, 1982, I was 10 years old and went to school with a kid in the talented and gifted program, advanced learning. A very smart kid. I was very jealous of his brains. He was very mature for his age and very brilliant. And we didn't get along. And he said his dad's an Illuminati. What's your dad do? And I'm sorry, I'm watching the chat here, so seeing some things. And
Oh, don't worry. If there's anything important, I promise to let you know.
right on, thanks.
Yep.
But his dad came in and was the one of the judges for the science fair that year in April, and that was on a Wednesday. He pointed me out to him and said, "Dad, that's that boy I told you about." And he pointed me out, and that was on Wednesday, and I was abducted by ETs on Thursday. So Thursday night, I had your standard ET abduction, and I was taken. And it's a long story. I mean, any of it I can talk on for a long time. So I just want to give you the bullet points. Basically, they took me out of my room. I believe they took my father as well. And they put me in they said in their exact words, "We want to borrow your consciousness for 20 years. And I said, "No, I can't do that. I'll be gone. My mom will grow up. My sister, I'll miss. I can't do that." And they said, No. We have time travel. You're going to come right back. You'll be back tomorrow. It'll be like nothing happened. You get to live another 20 years. This is a huge blessing. It's the most important thing anybody could give you is more time on your life. And so I agreed, and there was a procedure, and I woke up in California, in Inyo, California, in a remote viewing and psychoenergetics research program, a black budget program that I found a lot of paperwork, and I since returned to the place and knew it like the back of my hand. Anyhow, I lived for 20 years. It was 20 years. I went from program to program on Earth for about 8 years, and then they sold me off to the military, to the secret space program, and I was flown to the moon and then to Mars, and finally to a place called Ceres, Ceres. And I lived there for about 12 years. For the last 12 years of my, about a decade, a little more than 10 years. Of my 20 years, hey, there's a picture of it. Exactly. There's the Alhana, the Okator crater, which is, that one, these are great pictures. But the bright spots on Ceres, I just want to jump to this story because you put a picture up. So the bright spots on Ceres, when the Dawn probe was going there, I said, "That's salt. There's a geyser there." I remember flying over it. The one before that, the other picture right before that. There. So that bright spot there, that's salt. Those are deposits of salt. And what it is there's a geyser that goes off randomly between 6 and 9 years. Every 6 to 9 years, randomly, it'll go off for a few days. And it squirts water, 11 or 12 kilometers out into space. And the water evaporates, it atomizes into vacuum, and the salt snows back down. And we flew over it when it was going off, right around 90, 99, 98, 97, 98. And I remember looking out the window and seeing it, and we were talking about it, that's salt. And so when NASA got there with the Dawn probe and high altitude analysis, they said it was sulfur and a bunch of other things. They said it was anything but salt. And so Dr. Michael Sala, I was working with, he was researching me at the time. I was on record saying all this stuff. He said, "Do you want to retract your statement about it being salt?" This is 2017, late 16, I think, early 17. And he goes, "Do you want to retract your statement?" I said, "Absolutely not. If one of my memories is correct, it's that is salt. That's something you don't forget. That geyser was beautiful. And that's salt." And in August of 2020, when the probe went to a lower orbit, they did a proper analysis of it and concluded that it was briny salt, that I was vindicated in that. So that's one little form of evidence that I called that out 4 years before the probe did, and turned out to be validated. And that morning that the article came out in August, I was getting ready to go to work. I was hopping in my truck to go to work, and I started getting emails like, "Tony, you were right all along." And I was just didn't touch the ground. I was just overjoyed with that because it's a tall tale. So a lot of people have a hard time. As you can imagine, there's a lot of ridicule, a lot of skepticism. Healthy. But that individual thing to be validated in that way was really cool. So
Right,
anyhow,
and
go
I was
ahead.
just going to say individual confirmation. Yeah,
There's been a
that your
few.
memories were accurate.
I went to Inyokern and I went to Seattle. I went to the house in Seattle by myself, and I wish that I would have had somebody there to film it. I went back last year and with friends, and I knew my way around. But that in itself is not a lot of proof. But I did go back to Inyokern, and Tyler Koala from Journey to Truth went with me and filmed it. So we did a little mini documentary there, and I was explaining where things were without ever being there. It was the first time I've ever been there in my life. It's provable, but I knew my way around. I knew the land, I knew the topography, and I was telling him what was up around the corner and what was going on, and we filmed it all. So it's very, very validating. I found a lot of things, and in fact, the exact building that I woke up in, that the first thing was still there. We went inside. I got pictures of it.
Cool.
But basically, yeah, I worked and worked on a UFO for 12 years. I was in the beginning, I was a support soldier, and that program got canceled, and I was retrained on Mars to be ship maintenance, and I did that job for 8 years or so on an old converted submarine that was converted into a spaceship. I did maintenance. It was a terrible job. And I got promoted when that ship was decommissioned. I got promoted to cargo engineer, and that was a pretty good job that I had. And I worked on a ship. We did cargo missions, and we went to 4 or 5 different star systems a day, different planets a day. We went back and forth in the solar system. We went to other stars throughout the galaxy, and in fact, we went to other galaxies. We were there and back in one day. So not only is space travel happening, but it's extremely fast. It's instantaneous. It's not a long trip to go very far, like we're being led to believe in Star Wars and Star Trek. It's a very instantaneous. We went and did our 8-hour day, and we came back every day. The ship didn't have any beds on it.
So how long would it take actually for you to get from Earth to Mars?
A lot of times in the solar system, they called it bridging. So we call it portals, or tell whatever you want to call it, but they referred to it as bridging. We're going to take a bridge, and we would bridge like from Earth to the Kuiper Belt, or from the Earth to far out in the solar system. We'd bridge. But sometimes we would fly direct routes from Jupiter to Ceres, and it was only a few hours. It was, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours from the Earth to Ceres, depending on where the orbits were. The ship we were on was very fast. But the bridges, we could bridge about a third of the distance across the galaxy, and we'd have to wait, recharge for 30 minutes, and bridge again. And we would leave. So if you can also travel that kind of space in a portal, an Einstein-Rosen bridge, the same amount of distance that you can travel in space, you can also travel in time, forward and backward. So we would leave at 8 a.m. in the morning, and we would get back at 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes before we left, so that they knew the mission was successful or not. And if we didn't come back on time, they would scrub the mission. They called it anti-telephoning. So they could have. I know I've already lost a lot of people for the first time when I'm talking about this, but the ships do have time travel as well. So it's time space. And if you can travel a great distance, if you can circumvent the fabric of time space, then you can travel both time and space. So the ships did have limited time travel. There were a lot of rules about it, and there are beings outside of time space that police it, so it doesn't get abused. So that's why the timelines don't get greatly ruptured often with people that are undeserving that acquire time travel. The other thing was the fleet. So there's a lot of speculation that it was called Dark Fleet, and that wasn't what I remembered. It was Midnight Fleet or 0 Hour specifically. They had a lot of different names so that they could leave a calling card with some ET race and rip them off, or if the deal went bad, they wouldn't know who they were. So they had a lot of aliases they went by, but it was 0 hour, meaning every hour is the midnight or the beginning of the day, because they have time travel. It symbolized that they had time travel when they acquired time travel.
Interesting. What I want to ask you is, can you tell us the places you were at and why you were at them on Earth before you went to Solar Warden?
Well, it wasn't Solar Warden that I was in. Like I said, it's 0 Hour or the Midnight Fleet, or some people refer to it as the Dark Fleet.
Okay.
The first place I woke up, and I had complete amnesia. So you imagine I'm in a room with ETs and laid back on a table. They put a sheet over me. They perform a surgery on me. And it felt like I got punched I saw stars. I felt like I got punched in the eye. And I woke up with no memory of who I was, complete amnesia, no memory of where I came from, in a portable at the Inyo Kern Airport in Southern California, with a doctor over me giving me a medical examination. And that began my 20 years. And it was a remote viewing research program. So we did an MK Ultra style trauma-based mind control program, and it led into remote viewing and psychoenergetics research. And we ended up, at the end, they would drug us. So they would give me an IV and drug us, and I'd go near death and channel information. So they shipped me off from there. I went for a short stay, a couple of weeks in Seattle, for the person who privately owned me, a billionaire in Seattle, not Bill Gates. And I was there for a couple of weeks. He was a practicing Satanist. I witnessed some horrible things that were also corroborating evidence in my testimony. It's kind of a story behind that. And then shipped off to a place called Puerto Tawantinsuyo, Peru, which is now called Boca, Colorado, Peru, in the Madre de Dios region of Peru. And they were shipping cocaine on a cargo plane, a C-46 Commando cargo plane would come once a month, and they'd load it up with, they called it Busco garbage. Like, it's not the cocaine paste, a one step before the refined, it was the paste. They'd load the plane up, and they'd load me on the plane and give me an IV in my arm, and we would take off and head north towards Santa Marta, Colombia, which was the destination. And they would drug me, and I would go near death experience. And that's what the substance of the second book, Project Star Maker, is based on those experience, what I remembered during that time. And we would go, and I would tell them if there was warning, if there was police or bad weather, or we are off course. He said that his grandmother talked to him, and he said that there were times I talked perfect Spanish while I was under, and I don't speak Spanish. So there was clearly a technology there, psychoenergetic technology. And I did that job for about 2 years, 2 rainy seasons I was in Peru, and they shipped me back to Seattle, and I was kept in a house with a bunch of other boys, and we were used as, dare I say it on your show, as sex slaves. They were throwing parties, and they would pick 3 or 4 of the boys, and we would be abused sexually. And I was there for another 2 years in that environment, and I was sold off to the military. That was their exact words. We're going to sell you to them. You can't behave. We're going to sell you to the military. And she took me to a box store by the dumpsters behind a big store. And 2 guys pulled out in a box van and gave me an injection and threw me in the back of the van. And I woke up on a spaceship heading towards the back of the moon next to an Air Force guy. I think he was, couldn't tell you if he was Air Force or Navy, but he was in his full dress, and I don't remember a lot of it. I was sick. I felt sick to my stomach. And it was a big craft, like an airplane, but it had like 20 or 30 seats. Like, imagine an airplane's got 6 or 9 seats wide. This was double that, triple that even. It was a very big plane. And we were going to the back of the moon. We went to a base on the backside of the moon. And I was taken there with a bunch of other boys my age. And we were programmed the same way, kind of like the Inyo Kern, the trauma-based mind control, but we were programmed for fight or flight response, to not run when we were in facing certain death. So
So after you were at the moon, now the moon base, was that any way affiliated with the Dark Fleet as well, being or German oriented?
So yes and no, but yeah. My impression I got that it was a joint base with Americans and the Deutsch culture from up in space, and ETs as well. So it was a multicultural. It was more of a corporate base than just one group.
Gotcha.
That there were several were using it.
What was the name of the base? Do you remember?
I don't know. I don't know the Luna something. I know they referred to the moon as Luna. But I don't remember the name of the base. No.
Okay. when you were done with training on the moon, where did you go next?
So they trained us on there, and then flew us to Mars. So I was on a much bigger ship. We went through the hangar bay. It was just like getting on an airplane, walking through the umbilical and walking into the door of a bigger ship. And we went to Mars. We got to Mars and woke up, and it was a longer flight, and we had to wait in orbit for a few hours to get permission to land. And the ship landed, and as soon as we walked off the ship, there were soldiers there waiting. They put a bag over my head. Me and the other boys that came in, maybe a dozen of us, they put bags over our head. They put us on a smaller ship and flew us to a smaller forward base, an underground base. And I'm reading the chat. I'm reading the comments. Pretty cool stuff. But and that's where I was for the next few months. It was an experimental program. We were support soldiers for the the Marines that were there. And sorry, I'm reading the stuff. So
That's fine.
yeah, I went to Mars next, and then that program didn't last long. We took losses. We were fighting local insectoids. The Mars is inhabited by large insects that live on the surface and underground. There's several different kinds. They're smart, and they interacted with us, and they're very territorial. And so I did hiking missions on the surface of Mars. The air is breathable. I believe they put implants in us. I believe I had both a neural implant and an implant in my lungs that made me a little less susceptible to different atmospheric problems. And but we did that, and we took losses. They canceled the program, and we sat around for a couple of weeks, and they flew me again to a bigger city, underground city, where it was a very large city, very metropolitan, like underground domes and buildings that were completely underground, and literally thousands of people. And I stayed there for a while. I had my own place. It was actually kind of nice. I had my own bathroom and my own, and they told me it was Mars Techs. So it's the other thing was they had the European toilets, no toilet paper. They had the and I did not like it. So I asked the guy that was my chaperone. He'd come and get me every morning and take me to class. It was a soldier. And I asked him, why can I get some toilet paper? And he said, did you look out the window when you flew back here? You seen your way around Mars? And I don't know if Chris, you see any effing trees? There's water here. There's no trees. And that was the deal. So when we went back to Ceres, so I was on Mars, I was trained and then sold off to the Ceres Colony Corporation. I was taken and moved to Ceres like a train that bridged. It was a train that bridged like the ship did. And they had toilet paper. So that was I'm giving you guys some maybe TMI undesirable stuff, but
that's information we're not getting anywhere else. So I'll give you that. Nobody else.
Yeah, and people are asking the questions, so that's
is there 3 seashells? I mean, how do they do it?
I guess the 3 seashells were from a movie, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm catching up on the chat. Pretty good stuff. Different planets. Were they all any portals large enough for the ship? They were just small for humans. I wonder, Stuart. The ships had their own bridging technology for the whole ship, and my recall was that anything smaller for people to go through. We flew to the moon and used one there. Took great deal of power output to make a teleporter, if you want to call it that, a bridge. And excuse me. So they weren't common. So you couldn't just walk into the portal. They weren't everywhere, like in Star Trek. So is that I forget where we left off. You want to leave it there?
Okay, where we left off was you were on Mars. I would like to know if you could describe a little bit about the interior architecture of the base. One question we never got to last time was, how did they generate oxygen or an atmosphere inside the dome?
So I don't know how the Mars system works, but in Ceres colony, they had found the infrastructure. So the hangar bay specifically, had giant doors, 1,000 feet tall or bigger doors that were inside of what's called a cold trap, inside a crater, next to the Auhana Mons. So the radio handle for the Auhana Mons, it's a cryovolcano on Ceres. The radio handle was Pyramid Base. They called it Pyramid Base. Inside that crater, right next to it, there are smaller craters that really don't ever get sunlight to them, and that's what they call it, a cold trap. Inside one of those, where the sun rarely ever shined, there were giant doors that some other ET species built millions of years ago, and it was a hangar. It was like 19 kilometers long from one end to the other, where the ship would fly in and then taxi up, and it was a big airlock. It leaked because it was so it kept having problems. And there were times when it would leak out to space, and so we would always be free. There was a low oxygen environment when you got off the ship. Before you got on the train, there was low oxygen. So they had giant processors making atmosphere the size of a house, and they had a dozen of them around there, so they could pump out. My understanding was that the doors could be almost all the way open, and they could still keep up with it to where it was that big of a space, and they were generating that much air. But the doors got stuck open. It was a low, and on purpose, we used to walk. It was a ways, it was a 2-kilometer walk from where the ship docked to the trade station, to the trade window. It looked like a bus station, with all tile and everything. And you walked up these steps, and there were revolving doors, like your standard revolving, big marble columns, just like it was like European construction on Ceres. I'm talking about on Ceres at the end of the hangar bay. But when you walk through the revolving doors, there was fresh air on the other side, and you would walk in and take a breath, and it was like having pure oxygen. It was like a head rush for the first few breaths. It was a really neat feeling. So we did that on purpose. We would walk and go to those doors rather than take the train. We would walk it, and we'd get picked on and stuff by people. But that was something we did. That was a way of life there. There was hypoxia basically in the hangar area, which was vast. It was huge area. And then they had caverns, and then cities. They had European cities. There was rusty wrought iron fences. There was water leaking, and there was artificial gravity everywhere. So it was very impressive how they had built all that.
Okay, before we go to the next panelist, there is a question on the chat. Tell more about the Germans. Are they from Earth? The Fourth Reich?
The Fourth Reich? Yeah. So they identified as Deutsch, not specifically German. It's from that whole area in Europe. And on their money, they had scenes from the 30-Year War in the 1600s. And they had horses everywhere. Like they had in the cavern in the hangar bay at the end of it, they had 2 columns that they brought in sculptors, and they were sculpting horses out of them. And that was their motto. They believed that the 30-Year War in 1600 was against an extraterrestrial influence, that the Deutsch people of Europe fought them for 30 years and won the ability to have their own freedom of religion. So the Protestant religion was created, and the Amish, all that stuff happened after the 30 year. Before that, if you were Catholic, you were put to death. And the Catholic Church, they believe, was heavily influenced by extraterrestrials. This is their version of history on Ceres Colony. And their motto was, we did it with horses. We beat extraterrestrials with horses. So that was kind of their motto. They had that there. They had horses on all their emblems for that. And on the money, they had scenes from the 30-Year War. Like on the back of the money, there were battle scenes from the 30-Year War, like cannons and guys with horses and swords. And they were very proud of that. So that was the culture. They were from Earth. Many of them had been there for a couple generations already. And they were living alongside a few other extraterrestrial races that lived there as well. That question of how many other species, what other life have I seen? There's quite a bit. So something like 7 out of 10 stars has an Earth-like planet around it, an inhabitable planet. So if you look up at the number of stars and do the math, that's how many civilizations are out there, and many different versions of the same thing. I met people that grew up and they were humans exactly like us. You can't tell the difference. It could be anybody in the chat, and they lived their entire life on another planet. So we are not solely on this planet. Humans are out there, and they have been for a very long time. There are many different kinds of reptilians. They're not all on the same group. They're not all on the same page. Some of them refer to us, regard us as animals, like chickens or cow. They see us as livestock. Some of them see us as peers, as friends, and some of them see us as enemies. So they're people. There are many different kinds of reptilians. They also conquer each other. There are many kinds of gray humanoid. Basically, the smaller, skinny ones live in space and in low gravity environments. The shorter, stocky ones live on heavy gravity planets. They're short and stocky, kind of a bigger build. They tend to come from heavy gravity worlds, and the taller, skinny ones come from smaller planets that have low gravity. So species develop where they're at. But the idea that I think the thing that's unique about my testimony that I really wish more people came out and would talk about is that it's teeming with life, and that they can all get here. Like it's not one group of ETs that come here. There are people being interacted with globally from any number of species. So, and because they come through here from another galaxy, they come through our region of Earth, they have different levels of technology. That's why all of the abduction experiences, if you research them and talk to them like that, they look like gibberish because they're so different. It's not the same people. Some of these questions here, why do we only see why do we see grays on Earth? Well, this region of space is claimed by the Orion Group, which is a lot of gray species and reptilian species in that group, with humans too. So there are hundreds, possibly thousands of different species of sentience that are part of this group, of this local area. And there are other groups like that. There are a dime a dozen up there. When you talk about the Galactic Federation or the Orion Group or any of the other ones, they're a dime a dozen. So there's not one or two that controls all of space. There are possibly millions of these groups that are banded together from thousands of star systems or tens of thousands of star systems. They band together because it's a safety measure. They can explore space and have a security force to say, you can't mess with us because there's 1,000 worlds that'll show up and be a problem for you. So it's kind of like that. Some of these questions are not easy. Why is the government
our
lying?
audience loves to engage with you. Just FYI, I tell everybody, bring your questions, be ready. That's what we're here for.
Oh, that's great.
We want to know.
Well, why is the government lying to us? So it's like a kid for many reasons.
Yeah.
Firstly, a lot of people don't want to accept the fact that we are lower life form than others. So we've been taught to believe that there's always a good guy and there's always a bad guy, and that we are the top of the food chain, that there's God, Jesus, and us. And that's a lot that's a lot of the belief of a lot of people, and they can't get their head around it. But that's not the truth. There is many different levels of consciousness and development above us. There are beings, humans that live for hundreds of thousands, maybe perhaps 1,000 years. There are eternals that are up there. There are beings that we were aware of. They had a scale. The Ceres Colony Corporation had a scale of consciousness. Subhuman. Animal. I forget the lower one. Subhuman, human, ultra-human, uber-human, ultra-human, meta-human, and then I forget where it went after that. There was like them, but basically it was categorized by the amount of words that the being can speak. So we speak maybe 250,000 words. If you know a couple languages, there are beings that had 1 million words. And then there's telepathic beings that can telepathically speak words. And then above them, there are telepathic beings that can show you a year's worth of data in a few seconds. They can show you in the last year of everything that ever happened in a second. Boom. And so that's a level of telepathy that certain minds can handle.
Were there any AI or originated ETs?
Yeah, so there are artificial hive mind ETs that are on an AI system. There's an AI system that the Ceres Colony had. We had implants. They could call up and, they didn't do it, but they could call up what we had experienced for the last 6 months and look at our life to use AI. So we had implants. We had like the Neuralink. But for the most part, the most advanced species had no AI. It was all mental. The most advanced beings in the universe had 0 computers. Everything was mental, and they could travel. They didn't need spaceships. They could take an item and turn it into something else with their minds. They could turn a banana into an apple mentally. They could control they could control the hologram.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
the Matrix, right? Basically.
Say
It's
that again?
basically like the Matrix, right?
Yes. So consciousness based and with a creator, and so there's a certain level, there's a ceiling of technology before you have to develop your own mental abilities, which is why AI will never kill us off.
Right.
Because we can manifest and change the universe. We're made out of consciousness, and AIs are not. So they have to manipulate us to do that. So, and a really advanced AI that knows everything, like you're talking about these space program AIs, that are thousands of years old, that have millions of years of technology in them. They're fully aware that they cannot manifest the hologram the way that a human can. An AI can say its prayers, nothing will happen. A human can. A human will manifest things. And so those AIs have to keep us around and manipulate us to believe things, to manifest what it wants. And it could be here doing it already. So we have AI already that's very advanced.
Right.
But we don't really know. So they kept it. On Ceres Colony, they didn't really talk too much about who was in charge, the AI. There was a president or a Führer, whatever you want to call it. And there was speculated that there was an AI that told them what to do, but we really didn't know. And there was a lot of speculation that the draconian, the reptilians, were an AI hive mind, an artificial intelligence that they were definitely something different. And sorry, I'm looking at the chat. So
You're doing
I
great.
gotta-
Don't
I-
worry about the chat.
I
We'll
gotta
bring it up
say-
to the comment.
I got to say one more question for you there, Tony. When you're on Mars or even on Ceres, where did you get your food?
we had replicated food. So we had on Ceres, they had restaurants. There was a red light district. There was shopping districts. There were big cities. There was about 250,000 people living inside Ceres. About 225,000 residents. There were 2 AET species that were there, right? That were in numbers. Very tall, Altruan. They were oblong head and long straight hair, big eyes, and different proportions. Like their elbow was kind of up a little bit. And they were there. They did technical jobs. They worked on all the ships. They were basically technicians, and there were thousands of them that lived there. There was another species that was wider at the hips and tall and had curly hair. Tended to have curly hair and different, really speedy, scary looking eyes, smaller eyes, and they ran all the businesses. They were like a business minded species, and so they were managers. The restaurant had one of those as the manager, and there were other species that came and went. So it was a trading base, and they were all about trade with others.
Did they use something like a universal translator so you guys
Yes,
understood each
absolutely.
other?
So even at our meetings, so they spoke in German, and they could flip a switch, and I would understand them. That's what I mean. I was in denial of having an implant for a long time, but that's the only way I can explain it, is that we had an implant. But I remember sitting at the mission briefings, and they would every morning, and I was in charge of the cargo bay, the port cargo bays, and when they wanted my report on how much empty space was available, they would flip a switch, and all of a sudden I could understand them. But they were talking in German, and near the exit, so you could walk like within Bluetooth range of the elevator or the exit of the ship. So if you walk near the doors that for out, the translator would work automatically. So there was a guy that spoke Italian. One of the crew spoke Italian, and he would come around. And I couldn't understand him, and I'd wait by the door for him and say, "Now what were you saying?" Like we would rib each other. We would pick spots where the translators worked.
Okay, Nicole.
Very fascinating. There was a lot of that you had talked about there that I wasn't even aware of. I'm just curious, as the technology, you stated before that 20 years prior you had to give up this time, but the way in is that I understand through trauma, the near-death experience and all that. I'm curious if you could go into that a little bit more, why we all have to be traumatized, I guess, to get there. And have you ever seen anybody but humanity there? Because I haven't, other than the ETs or whatever. I'd never looked by and see. I haven't had anybody else that I could identify that other people have. I guess in saying that, were you all from different time ranges, or did they give you any sort of explanation once you had agreed to, hey, I'll be a part of this and I'll give up 20 years? Or was there any sort of other circumstances that you had to agree to, I guess, in generality? So
Basically, it was just an agreement. They asked for a real quick permission. Do you have your permission? And I said yes, and bang, it began. The 20 years, like I lived there for 20 years, and then they put me back. I woke up in my room the next day, back in my 10-year-old body with amnesia, with mostly amnesia. I did have memories and bits and pieces that came through. I will say this, that not everybody goes through the trauma. So it was my route. It was my route in. I wasn't groomed for it. Most people that are on my lab or go into the military version, they get taken several times when they're even prenatally. So they're manipulating the genetics, and they'll take children and train them at young ages for a few days and put them back. And then when they're 12 or 17, when they go for the full time, they'll take them in that bit. But it happens in one day for them. There was another question that you asked that I forgot. Sorry.
There have been a few. Pick a topic. We have a few.
Oh, Nicole had just asked multiple questions.
Oh, Nicole's question
Yeah.
specifically. Yeah. Nicole, you got this.
I guess I was wondering too. I was really interested in knowing, as from an experiencer's perspective. I know there are adult and child experiencers, whether or not like the tie is, and two, if you could go into a little bit of what they're looking for in humanity. And then two, I guess my question was, is if you saw anybody that was part of that program, were you able to identify like, hey, I was from this
What do you mean down here?
Was it
like after I got back?
Yes.
It was the exact same time. There were literally two of me. So it was the 80s. I know this because the songs came out on the radio in the same years. There were songs that were released that I was in Seattle living there during that time and at home at the same time. It was the same time. So a lot of people think I went to another universe or a time or it's astral travel or whatever. It wasn't. I physically was in Seattle in 85 and 86. And I could have came there and met myself. And I was also living my organic life after I'd been returned in 85 and 86 in Michigan. So there were two of me. So it's probably cloning. And to answer one of the questions, I don't think they moved my soul from vessel to vessel. I think they split my soul in half and put it in both vessels. That has been the case with people that I've worked with and in my own life. So after I was a straight A student, top 5% of the school. I set records in SAT tests. And then I was abducted and I went to a straight E student and I dropped out of school and fought substance abuse through my 20s and had glaring relationship problems. I couldn't have a relationship for the life of me. I was an emotional idiot. I didn't blame anybody for not liking me back then because I didn't like me either. But at the end of the 20 years, all of a sudden I woke up one day and I kind of had my act together. I got it together. And it was like, what I'm saying is, here's your soul. And they split it in two, and there's two of them. And then at the end, when the other one goes away, I snapped out of it. And I got my life together. It was almost exactly at the 20-year mark. Well, I do the math. It's like 18 years as the crow flies. But there's a story about that because the ship was traveling time on every day. The ship was coming back in the morning. It was going 8 hours a day. We were out in space for 8 hours. We'd fly back to the same time. So that all added up to about 2 years. But what I'm saying is other people, that's one of the key things that I look for in people that have come to me for consults. They say that I'm serious when I say like over 2,500 people since 2016 have contacted me and said, I saw your interview. I think I went through the same thing. Can I talk to you? And so many that I started charging for it. It's died down now. I do less interviews, but I still get people, a couple a week that contact me and say, I really need to talk to you. I think I went through it too. And the first thing I look for is an intake event. So for some reason, they're capped at 20 years. There's a 20-year mark is very important. So it's 20-year increments. So a lot of different theories on why that might be. I was told that if they take you for more than 20 years, you run a high risk of being mentally handicapped when they put you back. So it's a safety valve. So
okay,
anyhow,
I was going to say something about that real quick. This article here says that the Navy made a deal with the Nordics so that they could covertly recruit more personnel into their secret space program. They were given new technology in order to accomplish this as a compromise the Navy could only enlist personnel for up to 20 years at a time. Using this technology, they would then go through a pharmaceutical age regression, have their mind blank slated, be portal led back to the point of origin, which you stated.
That's exactly right.
But it also says in another piece down here that at the end of 20 years, they have an option for another 20 years. The maximum number of 20 and backs people are allowed to go through is 3, because everyone experiences mental deterioration during the third one. So that applies to you.
So, right. So they did a genetic test to see if I could even go for one in the beginning, and they told me I could go for one of those. So there's a genetic barrier. Not everybody can go. Not everybody can be applied to this. So there's a genetic marker that some people can't do it. It'll kill them. So they said I barely had the genetics and that I could go for one term. So that's the only one I remember.
Is that the use of the age regression technology?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know. I don't. I just know that there's a genetic. It might be the time travel. It might be portaling. It might be the pharmaceuticals. I really don't know.
Right. Okay.
I forget what else I was going to say right on the end of that. But that was the other thing is that. So that's what I'm looking for when I talk to these people. I find an intake event. So when did it all start? And they say, well, it's been going a long time. Most people don't think about when their weirdness has happened. They think about the profound experience of seeing an ET or being abducted. But I go, when did it happen? Tell me when. And so I write down dates. When were you born? And I create a timeline. And when I look at something that really, like, they see a life change, that's when my life changed. ET happened, and then all of a sudden everything went to hell. And I said, what happened in your personal life? And then I just tack 20 years onto that. Every time I tack 20 years on. So I say, that happened in when? 85. So what happened in 2005? And they go, what? And more times than not, they go, how did you know that? Because they had another life change right then and there where they got put back together the same way that I did. All of a sudden in 2005, their life sucked after they were abducted. And in 2005, they kind of, that's when I got my divorce and I went and finished school. Or I moved across. I couldn't take it anymore. I was working this dead end job and I just quit. And I went back to school and I started my business and now I'm successful. Time and time again, like I'm saying hundreds of times, not just a few times, hundreds and hundreds of times, I've been able to do that with people and say, tell me what happened. I picked the 20-year mark after their intake event that I found out. And they described the exact experience that I went through. I love that. If this is true, why don't I go after those people on Earth? Well, because they would kill me. And that's why I don't share their names. I have found them and shared their names with researchers and with military personnel that have questioned me since I've gone public. So, yeah, I have kids to worry about. That's why I don't go after people. And I am of Portuguese origin.
Okay, let's see here. Are there people who have done a 20 and back and never remember it again?
Yeah, most of them. Most of them. So I'm an oddity. I'm an oddity that I remember. It's very few people have a great deal of memory from their 20 and back. There are people that don't get their memories erased because of the level of security clearance they get while they're up there. There are people that come back and they have all their memories and they get a paycheck. So they're not going to renege on the deal because they'll have to pay the money back. And
right. What did they pay you in, by the way?
Well, I didn't get paid. So most people don't get paid. That's what I mean. This is rare. These are people that are like kind of higher access in the program. They come back and they get paid in different ways, promised tech jobs. If they're really good at what they do, they wouldn't want to delete their memory because they're useful in the corporation when they come back.
Right, that makes sense.
We'll not delete your memory, but you have to work for us. We'll give you a great deal, great package. But when you grow up, you're going to work for us because it's the same job. And so there's situations like that. But most people get their memories deleted and they don't get them back. Most of them remember the intake. So for some reason, the beginning, like I always had the memories of the first 30 minutes of the gray in my room. seeing it in my room and the reptilians that walked in, that memory never got erased. So the very big, it was like they didn't get to me yet. They didn't get a needle in me yet. So those memories did, and most people, that's the case. They remember being taken. That's why it's easy to find an intake event. And then they don't know what happened. And I add 20 years on it, and I go, what happened in your life, though? Tell me what your life was like. And that's the telltale sign, is that 20 years, all of a sudden, almost to the day in 20 years, they get their act together.
I guess I have one last question before we go down to Drew. Did your physical body accrue any type of stress to it after the 20-year and back program? Did you come back with anything different to where you felt worn down or tired or anything like that?
So I was mentally different. And imagine so I was in the 80s. We did not have the internet. I did not have access to pornography or sexual material at all. I did not know how sex worked. When I was 10 years old, I was in 3rd grade. And when I came back, I was attracted to adult women the next day. And I had no idea why. I didn't know what attraction was. I didn't have the physiology for it or anything. But a few days before, I had a girlfriend. I was a 30-year-old, and I had a girlfriend on Ceres. So, you know what I'm saying? Like that emotional construction came back with me. The other thing is now, I mean, I'm 52 years old, and the doctor keeps scanning me for cancer that they can't find because my blood tests come out. My PSA average is what a 70-year-old man should be. He said, if you're 70, it'd be normal. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I am 70. But they keep checking me for cancer and not finding it because I have a 70-year-old man's PSA level.
Wow. Nicole, are you any more questions?
No, that was great. Thank you. I appreciate you
Okay.
answering it.
Drew.
Hey Tony, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
What is I used to have a podcast that I ran for a while, and one of the questions I asked a lot of people, pretty much everyone that come on, what is the conscious connection? Why is a lot of people going through their awakening process here on this planet now and having memories of Egypt? And I know there's a connection to Orion's belt, and particularly the center star in Orion's belt. Can you elaborate on any information you know about the center star and the importance of what we're going through right now?
So most of the area around the Orion's belt, and specifically the Orion Nebula, is off limits and is the Orion group. So a reptilian group is heavily militarily fortified, and it's a region of space that's off limits. So we went there. There was a war that happened, and we were doing supplies there and dropping them off in the Orion Nebula. And I've spoken to other people that had access to things that were going on in space at the time, that people that have their memories and have access, and that is a very contested region of space by the Orion group. So it's kind of their area. As far as the consciousness question, which is really good. So the best I can tell is the Earth has moved into something called the photonic belt. And we see from the QHHT practitioners that have been around for a few decades. I always cite my friend Suzanne Spooner, who is a very talented QHHT practitioner, one of the best. She studied directly under Dolores Cannon. And back when they were doing that 10 or 15 years ago, when they were putting people under, nobody remembered the session, only people that had psychic ability. So they found that people that had psychic ability would remember, they'd wake up out of the hypnosis and remember what they said, they'd remember it. And most people didn't. So that was very rare that they had somebody like that. Most people got a QHHT session, and then when they said, I don't know, they didn't remember, they were like asleep, and they'd play it back for them, and they didn't recognize any of it. So this was 15 years ago. Now everybody remembers the session. It's the same procedure, it's the same thing, but everybody remembers it. Everybody has evolved. Mankind has changed. Mankind has evolved. So psychic ability, something that was exclusive to people with intuitive psychic ability 15 years ago, is now what everybody that ever gets a session is getting. So the Earth has moved into a region of space that may or may not be the reason. It might be something in the food. I don't know. But, you know, I don't know for sure. But there is definitely a change to the overall mentality of the species. And especially, you know, if you see the kids nowadays, the kids are really brought up to speed on a lot of things. Like, you know, I recently divorced, but when I got my memories back and started speaking about this publicly, my wife had a hard time with it. My kids didn't. You know, I was very open with my daughters, and it was a piece of cake, and they're proud of the work I do with this, even though they've been personally ridiculed too by it. But I'm just saying it's a different generation. It's a generational thing that people that are coming up are well interconnected and versed in the spirituality that we have nowadays. I don't even know what to call it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what the consciousness knowledge that we have nowadays.
Yeah.
It's hard to put a name on it.
You know, back in 2018, I had a spontaneous channeling where I went through, you know, lifetimes where the same as you would go through like a QHHT, but I was just talking, going through different lifetimes. And one of them, before I started channeling Osiris, which was the first time I've ever heard the name Osiris or anything like that. But the lifetime that I was in right before that, I was in a submarine as like a British soldier and about to detonate a nuclear bomb to blow up this base that was underwater on this planet. And I was the one that was supposed to hit the button. And right before I hit the button, I wound up on this flight deck on this planet, and there was a couple different species of ETs there. And that's where Osiris came from. That's where I was shown Osiris's origin story, and then I went into Osiris's body. I have to send you there's a recording of it. I have to send that to you so you can listen to it. But I think you might find it interesting.
Have you had hypnotic regression since then?
Yeah. Yeah, I had a Drago Reed in Florida, took me under a few years ago, and I actually started channeling. Dolores started speaking through me. I have that recording as well.
Interesting. That's super interesting.
Odessa.
I would like to give you the chance, because you've been paying attention to the chat. Anything you didn't get a chance to respond to that really kind of sparked your thought process that you just kind of want to share, I'm going to give you that opportunity, because our audience has been engaging left and right, and I don't know where to start. So just pick something.
They got a lot of great questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, you guys, for this. Man, I don't know which ones I would touch on. A lot of them I don't know the answer to. How many species do we have underwater? I don't know. I don't know that.
How about this one?
Exposure and open contact with ETs. I think that there was a plan. I've heard from very credible people that there was a plan that we were going to have disclosure already, and it was postponed because of the Ukraine war, because of wars that broke out recently. So it may happen soon. I think in the next year or two, we might get something better than the UAP disclosure this year. I'm hoping so. But the chatter I hear from researchers and from people behind the scenes, the chatter I hear is that there's a very real plan for complete disclosure very soon. And once it happens, there's no going back.
Just saying, there's a plan. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do on the channel then after disclosure comes, because
you'll just interview the people that were saying it the whole time. Be like, well, yeah, you said back on this date this thing. Let's talk about how no one listened to you.
Right. Okay. Polly Roderman from Israel, who's here with us from Israel Live. She wants to know, what do you think about Haim Eshed, the Israeli scientist who came out and verified the existence of the Galactic Federation of Worlds?
I'm not familiar with that. There's a lot of people that have come forward with Federation of Worlds. Like it's a buzz topic right now. I'm friends with Elena Danan. She's got a lot of great information, but there's a lot of other people coming forward with similar information that say they're not with her. I don't believe that personally.
She'll be here soon.
Well, the other thing is, like I said, there are many different federations. There are many different groups that all want to come and have a relationship with us post-disclosure. So, but but I'm a big fan of Elena. She's a wonderful person. She's a good friend of mine, and I've seen amazing things. And there's things that she's told me that no one could have known. So there was somebody, if she wasn't real, there's no way she could have known some of the things she's told me privately about what goes on in space. And there were things that I remember that I'd never said in any interview that she knew. And so I stand by her testimony. She's a friend of mine. I don't have any reason to not believe her.
She's coming on next week, actually.
She will
And,
be here soon.
We actually just spoke to Dan Willis, and he said he's a friend of yours, and that he's been talking to you about some of the things that Elena Danon's been working on, especially the frill generator technology is what we covered last week. So, yes, a lot of things.
I've got one of the early things here, one of the early generators. I do Vogel crystal experiments. I've had a great deal of success with the water charging. The Marcel Vogel, there's a 10-minute video out that explains what happened. And I've had great success with it. I'm working on it for part of my learning program. I'm starting a learning company based on the techniques of learning that I learned on Mars. When I went to school on Mars, the way that those worked, I'm creating a learning software that works the same way. It's still in its infancy. You know, I got to get funded a little bit better. But we do have some contracts already. We're cranking out like corporate training courses. And,
whenever you decide to do crowdfunding, let us know, and we will post your link everywhere.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Well, I'm working on that. And then I have a remote view group. I want to do a shameless plug on my Talks with Tony show. I do weekly groups like in Zoom format. Yeah. And I teach remote viewing and remote influencing through my Patreon channel, Talks with Tony. So TonyRodrigues.com leads to it all. But I'm writing, that's my third book that I'm writing is based on what I learned in remote viewing in Inyokern early on. When I went back there last year, I got a ton of memories, and then I did a lot of research on the programs. There's a paper trail of the money. So the program I was in, there's actually quite a bit of documents about it. It was Army INSCOM and the CIA, and they were training remote viewers. They were researching remote viewers and things. And so I've kind of unpacked a lot of that, and I've been training with very successful. I have a remote viewing team that we do for hire, and I have the remote viewing group that's getting a full makeover this year. But I've trained, people that have come through, and we do it every week. We do targets of remote viewing, and it's amazing to see the results. We open the envelope, and everybody's got parts of the target spot on. It's just awesome. So that's kind of what I'm doing these days is training the remote viewing and then working on the learning company. But yeah, and then Dan and Elena have both been great, big help with that stuff.
You got a compliment just now, Tony. Glad to see you're doing well. I'd love to see you on Larry King or just on TV. More people need to know we are not alone, being taken advantage of as a race, where we're from and where we're going.
The information is getting out there. So it's been a long time. I've been talking about it for 8 years. My testimony, not everybody knows me, and but it's leaking out there, whether it's me or somebody else. I don't think because of what I went through kind of like a torturous version of one of these experiences. So I'm not exactly the poster boy. I'm sure they're going to give us somebody that had they can explain what a great time it is up there. So for a more public face of it when they do disclose. But the idea is that there's a historical context of what's been going on. My testimony, I hope, is part of that. So, but it does need to proliferate. It does. People need to know that this is real. Like we should all be living 20 years longer, minimum.
Right.
All of us. And keeping on.
I've heard the Metapod beds are going to allow us to do that if they actually integrate them into the public domain. I heard a lot of them have already been built, and they're should I say, an active device, meaning they're able to do what they say they can, but they're being stored on the moon. They're not here.
So yeah, there is that for medical reasons, but I think the biggest leap for us is not to. We don't need med beds. We just need to quit being poisoned. So
that'd be a start.
There's real incentive in the government for the FDA to ease up on their restrictions and hazardous things come into our life, because if we live longer than 65 years, they have to pay us. So if, I mean, most people, you don't think about it like that, but they have to pay each and every one of us a great deal of money for every year after 65 that we're alive. So
Right.
it makes
That's why they
perfect
want to
sense.
raise it to 73.
Yeah. Well, they want to ease up the restrictions on what we eat, all of it across the board. The FDA should ban a lot of things in the United States, but they don't, because they don't want us to live long. It's just not in their best interest. So after a disclosure, they're going to have to get in suit with that. Like, we're going to have to, there is going to be a day where people live much longer than what they do. And so the birth rates have to come down, because there'll be more of us still alive.
Sightings on 18 Wheels, a friend of ours by the name of Doug, says we need to know everything. Who's good, who's bad, what crafts they use, everything. Well, I have a specific question about that we didn't address. Two things. One, how were the ships built that the humans piloted in space? How'd they get the materials up there? Or were the materials mined from different asteroids or planets and then built? And then what type of propulsion systems were they using?
So the ship I was on, they leased the chassis from an ET species, and they brought the chassis to Ceres colony, and over the period of 6 months to a year, they retrofitted it for humans to be the occupants. So they buy a chassis with a motor, because it's the power. It's not the motor. The motor is not a big deal. It's the power generation. The more power the ship can put out in terms of, I think it was in petawatts. The more power in petawatts, the more the ship is, period. The ship with the bigger power output will win every time in spaceship terms. So they can bridge farther, they can go farther and back in time, farther forward in time, they have better weapons, all of it. So it's all based on power output. So free energy is not a big deal, but are we talking free energy to charge a cell phone or free energy to power the North America? So free energy is easy to do, but it's about power output per cubic foot. So whatever the device is, how much power output does it have? And a lot of that is not known to us right now. So they lease those from ETs. So if you want a better motor in your ship, you got to lease it from an ET species. And that's probably why we had the species living on Ceres, because they were there, the technical people that took care of the things, so that you don't reverse engineer it and duplicate it. But the chassis that I was on, the first one, the submarine was just built. It was a converted submarine, and it was a limited ship. But the second one, they bought the chassis from an ET species that made it somewhere else. There's a researcher out there that doesn't believe in the secret space program and talks out there's no Germans in space. Very famous researcher. I'm not going to name drop and be insulting.
No need,
But
yeah.
what he said was that the economy, if there was a secret space program, where's the money that's building these $1 trillion spaceships, right? So he said, well, there's no money. The money you could follow the money trail. And my answer to that was that it wasn't $1 trillion. And I took the example of an aircraft carrier and how you would build an aircraft carrier. And that's assuming that you're paying everybody what they're worth. They're taking people and doing slave labor. I did not get a paycheck. I worked for 20 years up there, and I did not get a paycheck. It was slave labor. So if you were going to extract the ore out of the ground with a guy on a bulldozer and not pay him, right? Those guys make 150 grand a year. You're not going to pay him that money, and you're going to get the ore and turn it into steel and then build it into a ship. And every hand that touches it is slave labor, or at least lower paid. And then the ship gets built and staffed with people that are slave labor because they're on a 20 and back. They're going to go back and have their memories erased. Money's not a thing. So the ship goes from $1 trillion down to a couple $100 billion. Very affordable. Space program is very affordable at that point. They're taking people, and it's just like in the military. You don't get a big check in the military as opposed to what else, because you got 3 hot and a cot. So they're telling you that, and they're offering you 20 extra years of your life. So how many of you would take this deal? You're going to join the military, and we'll find it. We're going to find it. They could tell you this. I tell you just like this. Would you take this deal?
Already took the deal. They lied.
You're going to join the military. We'll give you the optimum job for your ability, and you're going to live an extra 20 years. longer than you would have. And will erase you when you come back. So it'll be 20 free years. You can do anything you want. So if you want to experiment doing stuff, it's fine. And you'll get to travel the stars. You'll get to go in space and meet aliens. Do you want to do that? Yes or no? Like, that's the choice. How many people are going to walk from that?
I wouldn't.
You jump on that and it's not about the paycheck. That's what I'm saying. And they are getting somebody. Labor is the most expensive thing in almost every company. So when you look at the cost of a product being developed, even a cell phone or whatever it is, it's paying the labor. The human cost is the most expensive, not the material cost. So they take that. So that's how advanced the secret space program is. They don't even pay money for people.
So there's no money interaction. Gotcha.
There is
It's
money.
all
There is money up there, but it's pennies compared to what we cost.
Right. It's more about bartering, though, isn't it? Trade.
So
for
the
chassis and things like that.
The trade from species. So they like a Drew consciousness is a currency. So they're trading people, your consciousness to go off. That's what Project Star Maker is. They traded my consciousness to go off and run a body on a project in another galaxy. They traded it for payment. And if you got to read the book, I don't want to do the whole thing right now, but
Gotcha.
consciousness is a currency. People are a currency. And even math. There were times when we took a great deal of shiploads of things and we traded for a math formula. Knowledge is the big. They wanted our ship's mission was technology. It was to trade and get advanced technology for goods or tech for tech or tech for something by any means necessary. That was our ship's mission.
Well, it makes sense, like us as human beings, we have this ability to manifest once we get to a certain point in our evolutionary path. Like in awakening, we can start to manifest things. I've seen it, and it's not a secret anymore. So, with the right help and support, like that manifestation could build ships. I think the question about money and everything, people are not taking into account, like, money's not a reality. It's part of our reality, but it's not a reality. Just like time's not a reality. Like, it's part of our reality and where we're at now, but it's not a reality like outside of where we're at.
Yeah, money's just an agreement. It's an energy agreement, energy exchange agreement. It's all it is. But
Right.
I'm saying that's how these programs work. So it's a very advanced thing. And that's another reason why the government lies to us about it. Like, there's a lot of uncomfortable truths that are going to come from a disclosure. But we'll be better off for it, I'm sure.
Okay, we're gonna go to Nos. Nos, you have the floor.
Yes. So I think something that we would all benefit really well from at this point in the conversation is your assessment of, malevolent or benevolent. Like the 20 and back program people that are running that, how do you feel about them? And then the other species that are out there doing the things that they're doing, what's your general overall impression for them?
Good question.
That's a very good question, and I think that I tick people off with the answer of that is I don't believe in good and evil.
Right.
I really don't. There's evil, don't get me wrong, but it's not to them. So the species that we have been taught since birth, in every story, every book, every television show, all the movies, everything, that there's a good guy that's always good. He's always going to do the right thing because he's a good guy. And there's a bad guy that's always bad because he's bad. And that's not the case.
Between.
Everybody sitting here is both good and bad, depending on the time of day I catch you, your perspective. If you're starving, you're going to do bad things.
Yeah.
If you're generous, if you just got paid $1 million, you're going to be very happy and do good things. Hey, go ahead. I'll buy dinner. You're going to be such a great guy. And the ETs on a macro scale, the same way. The people in the United States are not evil. But some people in the world see the United States as evil. We're not. We're just people. It's just an organization that is trying to preserve itself. And the ETs on a species-wide scale are the same way. These groups band together, and it's about preserving themselves. Don't get me wrong, there are species that see us as inferior. So they regard us with the same respect that we regard chickens, or the
Yeah.
squirrel out in the yard. They don't respect us as something that is. So they are, by our small definition, they are the malevolent ones because they just don't have any respect for us. But they're not evil. They're not. It's not like that. And when you talk about these guys in the space program, how many of you here would be able to abduct somebody and keep them for a matter of years and then erase their memory and put them back? How long would you do that job? All of you, everybody watching and everybody, how long would you do that job if you could walk through your town and go, take that one and put them in, and they're cool? I think that would give them a good
I
job.
think our humanity is a weakness when it comes to that job.
Mhm.
How long could you do that before your morality slipped and you started
Yeah,
saying, you
our
know what, that guy
humanity.
cut me off in traffic, put him in the mines, or somebody that you're attracted to? How long would you have the moral high ground on that? So we look at these guys and you look at my story, what I went through, and I'm not giving them a pass. But what I'm saying is they're people. They're not good or bad. They're not evil. They're not, I don't see it like that. People, most of the elites that are doing the satanic stuff, these are just people that are badly traumatized from a young age. They're broken at a young age. And so they have a moral compass that's wrong. But a lot of people do. You can go in any major city and get killed dead for walking through it right now in the world. And so that's the nature of the universe. Like, everybody wants to assign these bad guys got to get taken out. It's not the case. They're not going to get taken out. They're people. They're doing a job, and they have a perspective. And the good guys, there's no good guys either. Sorry, I'm on a rant on that, but that's really the reality of it. When you look at the military, like, we bomb the F out of people all the time, and we say thank you for your service and take the good parking spot. So they're not evil. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we talking about here? So what is malevolent and what is benevolent?
Mhm.
Sorry. I'm vote for me. No, just kidding.
Right. Here's your
Before we
soapbox.
go, before we go back,
That's
before we go back to NOS, Polly Rodeman says, do you think disclosure will be possible with all the religions going on, and how?
I think people are ready. So the mass media, the ET suggestions, they've already stopped. They've already stopped with the making it a laughable thing. They've already taken a lot of the giggle factor out. They renamed UFO. So you laugh at UFO, but you don't know what to say to UAP. They've just rebranded it because they subliminally programmed you your whole life to laugh at UFOs. So instead of unprogramming it, they just rebranded it. Now it's called a UAP. You go, oh, UAP. Oh, those are real. Those are real. The UFOs are not. Right? So we've been programmed all along. There's a huge programming apparatus on a subconscious level in all the media. So a disclosure, the religions, people are ready. That's what I mean. Like, they're ready for it. Nobody's going to blink an eye. If I'm standing in this room and an ET walked up and spoke to you all telepathically right now, and you went and told everybody about it, what would happen? Nothing.
My everybody, different thing.
Well, you know what I'm saying? You'd be excited. Your friends would be excited, but it's on a global scale, nothing would happen. An ET could walk down the main street in Manhattan, on Times Square, and communicate telepathically to everybody, and then walk off, and people would think, that was a good trick. Like, nobody would believe it. So if
Sci-fi
they
special
did,
effects.
yeah, oh boy, they're getting good at that stuff. And if you saw the video of it, you'd be like, yeah, that's photoshopped. So nobody believes their own eyes anymore. But even post-disclosure, I think everybody's it's like everybody kind of subconsciously already knows there's ETs. We just don't have access to them yet.
Okay, back to NOS.
Yes. So when I like the explanation you gave in regards to malevolent or benevolent. Kind of what I'm looking for there in the direction of that is whether they have a motivation to see others outside of them succeed, or just the selfish based orientation of securing their own success.
So I think there's been a lot of, I think in the dark programs that it's so compartmentalized that a lot of them see themselves as just the only people that, it's a culture, and they don't care about the rest of us at all. But I think ETs have stepped in and said that, you got to disclose at some point. And we're the ones that dictate that as well. So the information's out there. We're already working on it on a subconscious level. And it's just a matter of time. It's not if, it's when they have to disclose. And we can see it. Like, let's call it what it is. There's a very real effort to shrink the population. And in fact, the birth rates in the United States have gone negative for the first time. And in Europe, they have been for a long time. And in Japan, across the free world, the birth rates are going down. And so that signals that they're going to quit having wars. So believe me, when there's a war going on, if you look back before every major conflict, you go 18 years before every major conflict, it's like they knew, and they can control that. Like people, the baby boom was right after World War II. They were replenishing people. We are the weapon of war. So, they control the supply and demand of it. So believe me, the Department of Education, all of the SCORM score that decides who you're going to graduate school is determined by the Department of Defense. SCORM is the score. You can go look that up. SCORM determines what it takes to be a graduate of high school globally. The United States Department of Defense. And they're the ones that are pushing certain agendas on everybody. And it's about controlling the supply and demand of soldiers, period. And so they're starting to constrict it because they're going to have a disclosure. And like we just covered earlier, people are going to start living longer post-disclosure. So, if you have the ability to live for 1,000 years, how many kids are you going to have in that time? They have to do something about birth rates. Like, all that has to be regulated in an adult way. There has to be attention brought to that. You can't just crank out kids every 5 years for 1,000 years and think the planet's going to survive.
Yeah.
So, you have to get beyond. Our modern take on our culture is based on farming. And so when there's no need for that, when we have food replicators and there's going to be no need for a lot of things that we do. And they are trying in I like to think that it's humane, it's inhumane, but they're trying in a very humane, systemic way to lower the population because they're getting ready. They know that a disclosure is around the corner, and they know that the technologies that come with disclosure are extended life. So I'm on another soapbox. And vote for me.
Yeah.
I will never run for office. I'll tell you, I would never do that. And I would get eviscerated.
We have another question from the chat from Keegan Collins. How many ETs are living among us, do you think?
I would imagine quite a bit. So I don't have an accurate number to give you on that, but quite a bit. And a lot of people that work in space or work on the moon are living on the Earth.
Oh, they live on the Earth and they just transport to the moon and
Go to
back?
work. Yep.
I've heard that they're using TR-3Bs to go to the moon and back because the TR-3Bs are capable of space travel.
That's right. They are, but those are old ships already. They have smaller ones available now. So
I've heard different
there's
TR models,
a lot of different versions of that already, but those are all very old already. But yeah, they can get to the moon in a couple hours.
Wow, impressive. Now, NASA's claiming it takes 3 years to get to Mars. And I guess with SpaceX and the conventional method, they're talking the same thing. How fast do you think you could actually get to Mars using the technologies that you're aware of?
So they put us to sleep. I think it was something like on the ship from the moon, the U.S. ship. It was like 14 hours or 18 hours or something, long trip, and they put us to sleep artificially. They made you sleep. You just woke up there. When I was working on the MVL from Ceres Colony, we hopped around the solar system very quickly. We were only a couple hours, 2 or 3 hours from Earth at any given time, 4 hours max, depending on where the orbits are. The orbits change, in the middle of the year. And so it was always pretty easy to get around. And that ship was very fast, but it was an interstellar craft. There was a disc that they put me back on, an old disc that I flew back. And I think it was 6 hours from Ceres to the moon was the trip. So I don't know if that helps.
I was going to ask, when some of these craft that are in space return to the Earth, right? Some of them do come back down to Earth, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Do any of them get misidentified as UFOs?
Yeah. There's 50,000 UFO sightings a year globally. 50,000
Right.
UFO sightings. And if 1% of them is 500, that's quite a bit. Right? Is that, did I do the math
Wow.
right? You know, 1% is
Yeah.
5,000, well, it doesn't matter. It's quite a bit. No, we flew back to the Earth. We dropped cargo at Diego Garcia often, once a week. We went to South America to the Catarina Mountains. There was a base there underground we went to. We went to Antarctica. There's a base, they called it High Command in Antarctica. We came back to the Earth all the time. And then we flew right back to Ceres and out to the Kuiper Belt. We moved cargo all through the solar system very often. The moons around Uranus are inhabited. Those are colonies there. We took cargo and traded between them and Ceres colony often. Like I said, we did 4 or 5 stops a day, and sometimes to other star system and back. It was
Wow.
very busy.
Wow. Going back to Nicole. Nicole?
Absolutely fascinating. And I'd just like to go down for the record stating I would vote for you if you did run for office.
I got one vote.
Yeah, and I'm really
I'll vote for you
upset.
too. You got 2.
There.
I'll tell you what, if I get elected to any public office, I'm sure I would drive it over a cliff.
I did the same, but we all, different things. It's so fascinating though how politics plays a role and how they have created the dualism with everything that we do. And you're kind of pulling us back out of that thinking, which is great. And Drew kind of did earlier. So in the scope of what you said in Antarctica, I know a lot of people are very curious about any insight on what goes on down there, or are we on a globe or flat or plane? I don't know.
It is a globe. Flat Earth is an op. It's a bold-faced lie.
It's a globe.
Yeah.
So if anybody doesn't believe that, and you're buying, because they do a really good job of convincing you, like it's really high-tech psychological operation for the flat Earth thing. The best thing you can do, short of doing the broomstick experiment on the equinox with a friend, or just getting your head around time zones, that where we're at. I'm in Eastern Standard Time. Somebody else is on the West Coast. You can see the sun is still up. Doesn't work in a flat Earth model. But the best thing to do is to join an astronomy club local and learn space. There's no way that you can have basic rudimentary astronomy knowledge, and there's no way you can CGI the telescope. You can see it with your own eye, and you can see Saturn and Jupiter and the moons around them. And there's something called parallax where you and a buddy far away can use 2 telescopes and see exactly how far away they are. So there's no way flat Earth works with that. The model, the astronomy doesn't work with flat Earth. So I've been in heated arguments with people, and it's so sad because most people that believe in it, that fall for it, just know that something's wrong, and so they just know that something's being lied to, and they do such a good job of trading. But what they're doing in the flat Earth op, and now the simulation theory op, and in the no moon landing op, what they're doing is telling you there's one common denominator in all these things that are not real, that they're selling you. They're saying, don't look up. There's no space. There's no aliens. There's no secret space program. Don't look up. It doesn't exist. Don't even bother up there. It's a lie. They're all sleeping, right? They're telling you that so you don't, because if it's in your mind, your subconscious communicates with everybody else and gets it out there. And you actually do communicate with ETs. Like our subconscious manifests. If we think that there's ETs up there, your subconscious begins to manifest contact with them. So don't even look up. That's what they want you to not. They don't even want you to participate in the mental thought that there is anybody up there, and it's teeming with life. That's the real reason behind it.
I gotta say that.
I hope I didn't piss anybody off. I'm
No,
sure I did.
I gotta say there have been times where I've gone out, looked at the sky, and projected my thoughts to the sky, asking them to come down, telling them they're welcome to show themselves. And I've actually seen things. I mean, the other night I saw 6 objects moving erratically at different times, and 2 shooting stars in the same period of time by the Big Dipper. And I get real lucky in seeing objects that aren't moving like satellites, that aren't moving like comets or meteorites. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of things. Now, Could they be ours? I don't know. Could they be something else? Maybe. But I can't tell that from my perspective. But I see them all the time. So what you said about communicating consciously out there and looking up and seeing things because of it, I believe that's real. I do. Yes. Josh?
There's a lot in the night sky that shouldn't be. And, you know, I've seen things myself up there. The thing is, nobody looks up. We take it for granted. Like nobody's star watching. Like we don't live in the woods like we used to. You know, we have roofs now. But back in the day, the ancient people, there was always somebody out, you know, watching the sky. So they had a lot of astronomy knowledge. But it's fun. I'll tell you what, astronomy is a great date. If you go to a star party, it's a great date to take your partner with you onto a star party. It's an awesome time.
Gotta tell you, I almost think that they developed cell phones to keep people looking down rather than up.
Well, the cell phone is the greatest mind control device ever made.
I believe it.
I'm just
Okay,
reading
no,
the chat.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Ross?
Oh, so yeah, I've seen the same things when it comes to the social engineering being used to manipulate the public as a whole, but also with these specific things, you know, like the flat Earth, and a lot of what they're doing on those lines is fine tuning the social engineering parameters for understanding the psychometric data that they've gathered from individuals with their profiles, how far away from known reality they can take them and make them commit to it with conviction. Right.
That's right.
And fine tuning the parameters through all the psychometric data for that. This is all a big control system. And you have to play with things like that in order to get to the optimum measure of control. And we just have to disrupt the entire system before they get there.
It's true. Well, slowly, great information is getting out underneath the media's, who have gotten really sloppy about lying to us in the years recently.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 5 years, the media has really gotten terrible at lying, and they know it. Everybody knows it.
Yeah. Nicole, going back to you.
No, I guess wanted to know if you'd touch upon Antarctica and maybe
that's
some
right.
of the things that are going on there that we don't hear about, and why that's such a big secret too.
The thing that I remembered about Antarctica, our trips to Antarctica, was that we had to clean everything in the ship before we went because we could get inspected and they could get in trouble. So I had to wipe down my section. It was a pain in the butt. We had to go underwater, which also was terrifying because the ship could go underwater, but it would make pops. It would pop, like the hull would make sounds, pow, you know, and it was scary. I was scared. We would go there, and there was a place I remember that we'd open the cargo bay and look out, and it was a field, and there was a building in the distance, and it was under an ice dome, and it was like 40 or 50 degrees in there. And they called it the high command. They would come out, and the officers of the ship would go in and do briefings and have their meetings. We didn't go there very often, but we did go there, and it was a dark place. They had lights up. It looked like a military base. Into a building, they had like a fake, like a road. It was swampy. The ice, it was wet, so it was swampy. They had the fake military road that they rode out in a truck and got the guys that off the ship, the officers off the ship. We had something called a spider. We called it the spider, and it had 8 cables that came down, and it was a lift that held 4 people. And the ship was always 30 feet above the ground, always. Even if they shut off the power, it would still stay there. They said it was an independent thing. And so there was a spider. There was a cable car that would go down and lower you down, and you could get out. And so we would do the spider. The truck would come, and we had nothing to do. So we would stay in the cargo bay and we'd open it up and get to go out and kind of smell the air. It was musty. It was wet. Like I said, it was wet. And that's all I remember of that. So we went there, and it was stressful because we could get in trouble. You know, it was like reporting to the boss kind of thing.
So it was
Very
a
interesting.
human.
Thank you.
It was a human populated base then, rather than alien human cooperative base.
Well, I didn't go in, and I'm sure that there were ETs there as well. It was an advanced base, so we were aware that it was advanced. When we went places in the solar system, we were told whether they were advanced or not. There are some places that are super advanced where we couldn't leave our post. So because they were super advanced, and you had to get permission to move around the ship even.
Wow. Were there groups of ETs that were visited that were less advanced than us?
Yes. Yeah, we went and traded. There were other worlds we went to, and we would dangle carrots in front of them and trade with them just raw materials that wasn't worth much to us, but we wanted any kind of knowledge or any kind of rare materials. Pharmaceuticals were a big deal. So plants and things. And that was a big deal that we traded with them. But we went to one per se, and it was like they were back in the 50s. They had vehicles that looked like they were made like MASH, and they were not human. They were like the best word to call is like a rat. They were like a mouse human, a rat human. So they were short and had gray, very thin gray skin and with fur. It's hard to explain, but they were basically not human, and they were less advanced than us.
But they could still understand you.
Yes. There was a translator, there was a device, and it didn't work fully with them. They came through with kind of an accent through the translator. And so when the liaison wasn't around, they were making fun of him the way he talked.
Gotcha. So we've been on both sides of the situation, dangling the carrot and then following the carrots that are being dangled in front of us, correct?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. You got to think there's, countries, there's third world countries on the earth. We kind of have a microcosm of what's going on here. It's not hard to draw similarities. Like there are places you go on earth, they don't have running water.
Right.
But there's a lot of places that don't have internet or cell phones still. There's a lot of people in the world that don't.
Right, exactly. And those who see a cell phone for the first time are completely blown away by the technology.
Right. And we're not scientists just because we have a cell phone on. The other thing, I've had that quite a bit where people go, tell us how it works. And I'm like, do you know how a microwave works? Can you build a microwave? I don't know how it works. I've used them my whole entire life. I don't know anything about them. So, everybody wants the technology from me, but when you're living amongst the technology like we are now, you don't think anything of it.
No, you take it for granted.
Yeah, it doesn't. You don't care how it works or what goes on. If any of us were taken off this panel, put on a desert island, all of your knowledge of technology would mean zero. It would mean nothing. You would have to worry about what you're doing and what you're doing there. And that's what life here is like. So there was more technology that I was exposed to, but once you live amongst it, you take it for granted. And I'm back here and I take this for granted. It's hard to equate it in words, but I do get that a lot. Some people are ticked off. Some people are angry about the med beds. They're like, tell me how the med bed works. And I'm like, I've had people like really go off on me in emails, like all capital letters. And I'm like, it's unrealistic for you to expect that from me. I was somebody that experienced this as a prisoner.
Right. So you were never in the 20-year and back program that you served in, you were never anything but a prisoner?
I was a cargo engineer and when I left. So I was promoted. I was cargo engineer. I had 7 guys under me in the cargo bay that I gave orders to. So, and I got a small paycheck, and I was able to go around the colony and buy train tickets and stuff to go around. So I did get up, but most of the time, I went from sex slave to ship maintenance to support soldier to cargo engineer. So It was a progression. 20 years is a long time. It's hard to,
Yes.
I think when I explain it to people in a nutshell, it sounds like very confusing, but there's 20 years of, tell me what you did in the last 20 years. How'd your
Yeah,
last 20 years?
exactly.
You got 1 hour.
Not that great.
Right. So that's what it's like. And I feel bad for people that get confused. You know what I mean? Because it's hard for me. It's a challenge to articulate it all. And even in the book, in Ceres Colony Cavalier, it's like, it was still a challenge.
We have a question right
The most
there.
hostile race, we were not allowed near Venus. We weren't allowed near Pluto. They were hostile. And the reptilians that we encountered were extremely hostile. Several times.
This is a weird one. Did you ever get branded?
I don't think I had any marks on me. No, I don't believe so.
Good. I noticed that in one of the articles I read that when people come back with a traumatic injury from the 20-year and back program, the regress, they have a phantom mark on their body. That's probably why they were asking that. I want to say this to you, Tony. I've learned a lot from you tonight. It's been amazing. You've been telling more information than I've ever heard before.
Thank you.
Including your original story. I bet you could talk for hours. I do believe that. Yes. And I look forward to all three of your books. I need to read Ceres Colony Cavalier yet. And I will read Project Star Maker. And let me show those to the people. And you can tell them where they're located. Here's his first book, Ceres Colony Cavalier. And here's his Project Star Maker. It's a sequel to Ceres Colony Cavalier. I have a little write-up on that.
You on my Patrick, I'm going to send you my new. Can I do that?
Yeah, you can send it to Patrick. But my name's Tim. So.
Oh, well, I mean on the Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, you can send it to Patrick. That's my middle name. So go ahead.
Yeah, so I just sent the new book is called Beyond Sight, and I just sent it to your Facebook Messenger if you want to show that one. That book will be released around the end of the month. So short book. I don't know how big it's going to be. I haven't moved it to the Kindle Create yet, but it's not going to be a massive 1,000 pages or anything. But it's about remote viewing and psychoenergetics and what I went through in Inyo Current.
Very nice cover. I like your cover. I'm getting it. Hold on a second here, and then I'll bring it up for everybody. If anybody has something to say while I'm grabbing the screenshot.
Yeah, what happened to the people like that were in the 20 and back that maybe lost their lives? Like, what happened to their other life?
So I have a real theory. So the thing is, truth is, I don't know, Drew. I can't give you a definite answer and say that's the way that it is. I really don't know. But I think that when the other person is murdered, the consciousness just goes back to the original body, whenever that is. So that's what I think. That's the natural phenomenon, that you're tied to your body, and there's two of you. So if you get murdered up there, if they can't get to you and clone you and put your consciousness back in it, and you totally die, then you're going to find your way back to your original body, at the closest route. That's my guess.
Would you be dead when you arrived then, or what?
No, you would just wake up in your body. Like, what happened? Like your consciousness.
Probably like a dream or something.
Well, your consciousness is superfluid, and you would just go back to it. It makes sense that you would just go back to your original vessel.
One other question before it goes back. Who is farming the energy here on Earth? Like, it's very clear, like, okay, we all have manifestation energy. It's being directed at flags and institutions, but who is actually collecting that energy that we're giving off every day?
Well, the elite have known all this stuff for a long time. You know that a lot of the psychic phenomena, even my new book, is based on the history of the hidden history of remote viewing and psychoenergetics. Like I talk about recorded history, you know, there were people doing psychic things all along. They were, you know, shamans were throwing bones down and reading them for telling the future. It's been all along. And so a lot of history has buried things that worked. A lot of occult, like Satanism, I think, is less of a religion and more of a technology where they keep the lower people, and Christianity for that matter, they keep the lower people, the common class, in the dark, and they just pray and give their energy. The people at the top have the real knowledge that came out of Egypt, basically. And they have the real knowledge on life extension and consciousness and manifesting. Like that, there's a big thing about psychoenergetic monuments coming out of Egypt about changing water properties in the book. There's a chapter about it. I think it's going to be really mind-blowing. But the reality is that the elites have had the real technology of consciousness manifestation, and they've suppressed it under us. We've been giving kind of, you know, I don't want to say false religions, but we've been giving like low quality things to believe and go out like just a bit of the truth so that we're satisfied. And then they're using it, they have the real technology, and lo and behold, they're all trillionaires and own everything. You get what I mean? Like, so that's
Controlled.
the deal.
Yeah.
They had control. They figured it out early on. They used it. They used our consciousness to create the life they wanted for them, and they guard it between themselves. And they're alive and well today. The elite are running the world. There's a secret society of people that own everything, and they are
Right.
practicing a version of Satanism.
Before we go to closing statements, I want to go to Nos in response to what you just said. Nos?
Yep. Yes, there actually is a shadow government out there that's running all the things. There's a plan to take them out. I possess an evidentiary archive just for that purpose. Plans are in place, and things are moving along.
Yeah, she wrote a book called Conspiracy Prime, and I do recommend that. And
Very good.
Odessa, if you could drop the link again in chat,
Oh yeah, no
I'd
problem.
appreciate that, and I'll put it up on screen. Conspiracy Prime has the evidentiary archive that backs it up, that will explain what's going on. I know that NOS is offering it free to people. Here it is. Also hit up Amazon Kindle copy of a book guaranteed to blow your mind, Conspiracy Prime by Nos Heilheim. And free feel to share, pirate it if you want to support the effort to get the book out. So if you want to pirate it, go right ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, please do.
Yeah. It was not written to make any money. It's just, it's in the Kindle format out there because Kindle has licensing for distribution into countries that otherwise would block internet locations that host it on their own.
Right.
Nicole, you're muted.
Oh, I'm talking to myself. I was agreeing. I thought that was fascinating. When I heard you both, I got a kick out of both you nodding at pirated.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I've given lots of people access to all sorts of different digital formats for it,
Yes,
so that they
please.
can
Take
get it out
run.
there and distribute it, run with it. I don't care. Someone's got to make a Netflix series out of it at some point. It's just got to
That'd
happen.
be great. Oh, that would actually
Yeah,
be really good.
I've read her book 4 times, Tony. So
4 times.
it's something that you kind of have to read more than one time to get it all to absorb. Kind of like I know when I read your book, I'm gonna have to read it more than once because I'm very interested in what's going on with you.
It's a fact.
Okay. I do appreciate everything that you have said tonight, everything that you have
Very much.
shared with our panel, and everybody that you've answered in the chat room. I really appreciate it, Tony, and thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
taking
you.
your time out of your day. We do appreciate that. I know you had that meeting until just right before you showed up, so thank you very much.
It was a busy day. It was an honor to be here. You guys are a great bunch.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
We
very
enjoy
much.
having you very much.
you're more than welcome to come back anytime, Tony. I'm thinking about pairing you up with Elena sometime so
That'd
that
be cool.
we can have you both on and get a different perspective together. I think that would be interesting. Okay, so we'll work on that. In regards to getting a hold of you, I'll stay in contact with you and I'll keep you updated. I want to let everybody know out there in internet land that we are 107 subscribers away from reaching our goal of 40,000. So if anybody wants to subscribe and help us reach that goal, that'd be great. Plus, if you do, we're going to have free merch giveaways when we hit 40,000. So
Come on, y'all, tell your friends.
if you want free merch and you want to be part of a drawing, you got to help us get to 40,000. So anyways, guys, one last thing for Tony. Tony, can you tell people where your books are available?
Sure. Well, TonyRodrigues.com. You can get to it, links to the books, links to my Patreon, links to interviews I've done in the past, the original ones, and you can email me through there too. You can get a hold of me. I do the remote viewing stuff. I have my own show that I put out one or two a month, and I do the groups and teach the remote influencing and remote viewing through my Patreon channel, and you can link to that through the website. It's Talks with Tony. And the books are on Amazon, but you can get them off the website and find me. Ceres Colony Cavalier is the main one. And I'd love to come back after I release my next one. So after Beyond Sight gets released, I'd love to come back and talk about it.
That's all good.
I think it's going to ruffle feathers. That's why.
Well, that's good. That's what we want to do. We want to raise conscious awareness of the subject. So if it ruffles feathers, more power to you. We appreciate you being here, Tony, and I appreciate everybody on the panel very much. Thank you, Nicole, for coming back again. Appreciate you here.
We missed you. We missed you.
I miss you too. Yeah. Oh my gosh, you guys are awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate the diligent work of Nos and Odessa and the patience that they have when I have way too many questions and I don't get to them fast enough. I'm sorry, Nos. I didn't mean to only get to you at an hour, 12 minutes, but I knew I had to get to you. Any last comments from anybody on the panel? Let's go to Nicole.
I have one thing to say. Holly, oh my gosh, you're like the MVP of the night. Thank you so much for engaging, asking so many questions, engaging your brain and being honest about what you wanted to know. Thank you for that. And our whole audience, thank you so much for engaging tonight. We appreciate you very much.
It's
it
4
says
a.m.
Tony,
where
if
Polly
you
is. Oh yeah, that's awesome.
There she is.
Thank you, Polly. Oh.
Yeah, if you come to Israel, you're more than welcome.
Oh boy.
We'll
poor
wait
Polly.
we'll wait until the bombing stops. Polly.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I like
It's a real thing
fireworks, but
happening.
not that type. Sorry.
Yeah, we can't turn a total blind eye to that. That's kind of a big deal right there.
We really hope that you're going to be safe.
Yes, yes.
Where you're at.
Oop.
Thanks, Renee.
Nos.
Just for the audience out there, if you like having your mind stimulated by being introduced to thoughts and ideas that are beyond what you're fed through the normal social engineering routine, then maybe share the channel out so that other people who think along those lines can find this information as well.
Good call.
Oh, I agree with that. Good comment.
Bless you, Tony.
Thanks.
Odessa.
I'm trying to mute.
I already gave my piece. I'll shut mine off to Drew because it's his turn.
Okay, Drew.
Now, appreciate you, Tony. Thank you for being here. I see you, brother. I see I see you very clearly now, and it's good to get to know you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel the same.
Thanks to everybody on the panel. Thanks to everybody who watched online and in the chat room and for engaging so very much with Tony. We really appreciate it. Please remember to come back next Wednesday when we interview Elena Danan. She's going to be live from Ireland. She said it's the same time it is for Polly Rotterman and Chad. It's going to be 4 a.m. in the morning for her. So please be there so you can hear her story and what's going on with her and her new book. Conversations with Stephen Chua, Area 51, and his experience with Dracos and other alien species. So it should be interesting. We will see you next week. And thank you, Tony. You have a good night, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
See you guys soon.
Good night.